a Kanban flow ideally would look like. Usually, I would wait till we get to the point where, because we have a different session where we'll talk about tools that product managers use, and I'll just walk you through the tools, like just base level, what you need to do with the tools, right? But today, if time permits, I actually want to keep to the 45 minutes timeline today. So if time permits, then we'll end the class early, you ask your questions, and we move on forward. So let's start with Agile, right? I'm sure some of us have been hearing the word or the term agile, agile, agile over time. Like everybody's just saying agile. You have to be an agile person. We are an agile company. We are this, we are that. What exactly is agile? And why is there so much noise about it? Why is there so much fuss about it? Why is everybody making a why is almost every company in the world saying that they are looking for, yeah, an agile team? They are looking for people to be agile, right? And how does that pertains to you as a product manager? So agile, like I tell people a lot, is a mindset. And outside of agile, we have other kind of mindsets that you can have, and this mindset defines how we work or how a company works, right? So usually, again, I told you at the beginning of this training that I will try as much as possible to not teach you like a lecturer. So I will not use the regular textbook terms. I will try as much as possible to avoid them so that at least you can understand why things are the way they are, right? So again, when you hear that somebody is saying we are agile, the what is expected is that that person has a mindset that agile promises. So agile is literally a mindset. So think of it like, oh, okay, this is how the I'm looking for a real world example I could use to explain what mindset could mean, right? Aha. I'll use the difference between us and probably Dangote, right? All right. Dangote wants to start a new petroleum business. The first place he was not trying to look for investors. He went to bank to go and get money, right? He got loan, started something first before looking for an investor. The regular the regular person or Nigerian who has a business idea is looking to call who's looking for somebody that will bring money and just say, take this 10 million and start your business. But a rich person understands that that's not how money works. So when they have ideas, when they have something they want to do, instead of waiting for the money to fall down on their lap or trying to save the 10 naira till it reaches 10 million, what they do is they take the big step. They go and they take the money they have, register the business, set some things rolling, try to get some partnership, and probably at the end of the day go to banks that are basically financing things like this, the back of industry microfinances. Go to them, get huge amount of money. In fact, some of them are already even begging them to come and collect money, right? You can imagine the number of bank CEOs that are calling Dangote, Alpha, do you need money, right? Or calling other entrepreneurs that we have, literally begging them to collect money. And you see the difference between the mindset of people like Dangote and the mindset of people like me or you or somebody else in the community is just the the sense of, oh, if what's the worst case that will happen for us? The worst case that will happen is they lock us up. For them, the worst case that will happen is they get an extension of on their debt. For those of us that probably don't have a lot of money, we don't come from a rich home, we are not very influential. It's okay, if we default on this money, they're going to lock us up, right? That mindset is what stops the poor from taking, I don't want to use poor, let me say middle class, because we are not poor, right? The middle class from taking big actions or big steps, and allows the rich to keep getting rich, right? Um, that luxury that allow them to throw care into the wind, right? Somebody just wakes up and say, I want to go into fully into, I want to start powering the entire petroleum of Africa, right? That's something that an average person in Ijebu cannot just stand up and say he wants to do. All right. So the difference between both of them is the mindset they have. And just this is just like a basic explanation of how mindset works or how mindset determines the outputs that we have eventually. So there's one person that says, hey, I can do all things. I can do all things. All I have to do is just set my heart to it. The other person is saying, oh, I'm on if not, if as assuming I was born in the UK, if not because I was born in Ijebu, if not because I was born in Ilori, if not because I was born in Ibadan, right? If not because I was born in Akwa Ibom, right? Assuming I was born in Lagos, do you know who I would be by now? If I was born in like Lekki, if my parents had money, I mean, it's a common conversation we hear from our peers. Maybe some of us have even mentioned that, mixed that statement before. If my parents were rich, can you pay my daddy's Dangote? Do you know the number of ideas that I have that I just need somebody to sponsor it? Whereas there's people like that that they don't have that constraint. Their mindset is not constrained. They are not held back, and they are able to say, "Hey, I don't have money. However, I have an uncle that have money. I don't have money. However, we have access to bank. However, there are banks that are willing to borrow if the business plan is good enough. I don't have money." You see, the difference between both people is, let's say, exposure or the mind that they have, right? What is in their mind? The set, that's why you call it mindset, the set of knowledge that is in their mind. We've seen people, and again, this just to buttress this example before I actually go to the topic of today, we've seen people that have grown from zero. I was watching a documentary about one of these popular Yoruba film director today. I can't remember his name, and they were saying, oh, he was once a bus conductor in Lagos, and he once a bus conductor in Lagos is now he owns one of the biggest film village in Africa, right? Or should we talk about this one of the biggest real estate moguls in Africa today? The guy had zero naira. At some point, he was basically working as a cleaner in homes, right? Eventually, he owns one of the biggest real estate. And the last time I watched this, um, is recording as well. It was the same thing he said, right? That he he started from nothing. Like all he had to use people's money to build the buildings that those people would eventually live. All people need to see is idea. You see, there's one man with that particular mindset, and then there's another man with another mindset and say, no, I have to have that 1 billion to actually start the business. I'll give you another example just to portray the point, right? Mr. Let's say Peace, right? Peace has two plots of land, and then Constance has three plots of the same two plot of land, and both of them earn the same salary. Peace is saying, "Hey, um, every month I'll buy if it's a cement I want to buy, if it is sand I want to buy, if it's this thing I want to buy." And then she locks up every negativity, and then every month she buys. Sometimes she buys the cement and sand. They make some blocks. She keeps it there. And then there's Constance. Again, this is just example. Constance is saying, no, if I do that, I mean, if you buy block and you make it on the ground, it will break. You can't do that. So say if you buy cement and put it, the cement would, what does it call it now? It will frozen up. And she thought about all the ways that our investment could actually go missing, right? And I said, no, I will eat with this money, and then I will work very hard, and a day will come that I will be able to earn like big money, and then that big money can actually do like I can just take out of my salary and say, go and do the what do they call it? The foundation, right? Another person, let's assume that Joseph also has the same like plot of land, and Joseph says, oh, see, both peace is destroying her life because what if those block destroy? And then Constance seems to be spending away all the money she's making. No, me, I will do piggy vest. I'll be putting the money instead of buying block. I'll be putting the money in a piggy vest. At least at the end of the year, I get 70%. That money would have increased, and by that time, the money will be big enough to actually again. If you notice that these three examples that I gave, They both have the same piece of land. They both have the same amount of money. They both earn the same salary, rather. I mean, we can even make all the case exactly the same. They both live in the same compound, which means they pay the same rent. They both probably eat the same type of food. They both have the same number of siblings. Let's assume everything is the same. They will most likely take decision in different way. Why? Because of their mindset. Now, as product managers as well, there are certain mindsets that governs how we decide, like how we work, right? Um, or how we build products generally. And it's not just based on product managers, but because we are managers, it's important that we actually understand how we work so that we can manage those under us properly, right? So that's why you notice that the topic of agile is always discussed in any managerial talk, course. If you do MBA, and in the MBA you are training to be a CEO or whatever it is you're training to be, agile will be taught, right? Ways of working generally will be taught, right? So which is why we are learning this. I hope you understand the idea behind agile being a mindset now. It's basically how we perceive work. How should we work as people who build products, right? Now, before now, there was a, I didn't put it here intentionally because I don't like talking about it anymore. There's a methodology that is also still used till today called waterfall methodology, right? Waterfall methodology is best suited in a space that is not ever changing, right? Or you are trying to build a house, right? Why? Because waterfall does not account for change. So waterfall believes, again, like I said, the way we work. Waterfall believes that you should finish one thing before you jump on the other. And that's why most of our parents, while we're growing up, would say this. Waterfall was a very popular concept as at that time that almost all our uncles and nieces and literally anybody that comes up that is already working in corporate space, when they come in, they see that don't put too many things at the same time. Do one first before you jump onto the other one. But we live in a diverse world today where that is not the case, right? Things happen very fast. People might be loving this trend right now, and in the next split second, they are moving to the other thing. Whichever company that is able to adapt to that change faster wins the race, right? Wins the race. And I would try as much as possible to explain a bit on this. I'll try and dwell a bit on this so that you understand why agile. Why agile? Again, going back to before when we had Waterfall, if you want to build a app as at that time, and that's why it took so much time for our banks, especially in Nigeria, to actually enter the technology market. Why? Because it takes a lot of time. You have to do research. Research itself could take years, right? Sometimes a whole year. Product managers, at that time, they are called project managers. They would oftentimes spend days, weeks doing research, and they don't just do research alone. They consult people, they meet, and that's where RACI model comes in. Again, RACI model. What's RACI model? RACI model is basically an acronym for responsible, accountable. What's that? C? Consulted and what's the I? Basically it's just a model that says, okay, there are certain people that needs to be involved in every phase of a project, and some people are responsible, some people are consulted, and some people are what's the accountable. Then I can't remember the I of it. So the idea is at the beginning, the project manager will consult certain people. They are responsible for it definitely, and then they hold some people accountable to ensure that those every research they are making is documented. And this idea is what we brought into our university research. If you remember, at least I remember that when I was doing my final year project, my project was very practical, so I didn't have to move around. But a couple of my friends had to travel, right, to go and do research work. They had to travel. I remember one of my friends traveled to Lagos to a particular company to go and ask their staffs questions and all of that. And then brought the question, did analysis on it, and then AB was able to make inference, right? This whole research happens also when you want to build a product in those days, right? And after research, you come up with like an hypothesis, just like any other research, that hey, X and Y. Again, I'm still explaining Waterfall, which was the most popular one before Agile came. Then you come up with an hypothesis and say, hey, truly, people need waters to be. Let's assume the problem you are trying to research is people need water to be delivered to their doorstep every morning, right? If not, they will not drink water. And then you want to build something that delivers, or you want to start a business that delivers water to people every morning, right? Let's assume that that's the case, right? So you make a hypothesis based on your research, based on all the things that you've done, and say, okay, yeah, the hypothesis is that truly people need um, water, right? Need water to be delivered to them to actually take water because they forget to take water, right? That's an hypothesis. After that hypothesis, then you bring designers in. In the case of building a house, usually the designer in that could be an architect. In the case of building a product, is a product designer. In the case of whichever kind of product you're building or idea that you're coming up with Waterfall, it's saying that at that point you bring in designers. And then during that time, you bring designers in, they design it, they review it, blah, 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 blah. After design, they implement, right? After implementing, you test, and after testing, the product goes to life. There's usually no room for change. That's why till today, if an architect already designed your building and you've gotten approval for it, oh, sorry, there's an approval in between. You've gotten an approval for it at the Ministry of Interior. I think it's Ministry of Interior. I can't remember. The ministry in charge of basically approving buildings before you build it. If you go and build what you like, right, they will come and destroy that house. They will come and break it down. Why? Because you did not get building approval, right? They are still following the old waterfall approach. So architectural person design every single part of that design that was submitted, that was approved, has to be followed. The kind of wood you use, the kind of blocks you use, the kind of irons you use, every single thing has to be followed to the core based on Waterfall. So there's no room for change. You can't say, oh, we cannot find this wood, so what should we now do? You have to find a way to find it, right? That's the idea behind Agile. But of course, behind Waterfall. Now, because Waterfall is so rigid, right? It was eventually dropped. Again, like I said, don't think of them as methodology because that will make it very hard for you to understand. Think of them as the way we work, right? Because Waterfall was so rigid, you have to and that's it made people abandon a lot of projects because they've researched a project 1 year ago, and while they are building it 2 years after, that project is out of stock, right? For example, uh 2 years ago, everybody was shouting fintech, 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 or 3 years ago, fintech, 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 or maybe more than 3 years ago. But yeah, there was a time it was fintech, fintech, fintech. At some point, everybody was like, no, you have to do what's this thing? Virtual reality, augmented reality. At some point, it was no, what's those baby that they used to use in crypto? I can't remember the name. Can somebody help me? Those artwork that
Blockchain.
you, yeah, blockchain, but there's a particular one like an artwork that you sell online. It was very popular this
Oh,
time, right?
okay.
You get what I'm saying? So things are
NF.
moving to NFT. Yeah, there was a time that it was just NFT.
NFT.
Like if you look anywhere on LinkedIn like this, is monkey that is designed. If you even motion graphics designer tools, they are also designing monkey. Everybody's designing monkey to sell, right? All of these things that I mentioned right now happened just in the last 10 years. So there's a need for us to move and innovate as fast as possible. So if you're a company and when everybody was shouting fintech, 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 you built fintech and you said, oh, using waterfall model, you have to use like a year to plan how to even reset that your fintech, right? Because you have to reset compliance, you have to pay a lot of things when it comes to licensing and all that. You eventually now got everything, right? And then it's okay, now we can start working and blah blah blah. Again, remember, Waterfall, you cannot be getting license at the same time be working. No, you have to finish one phase first before you start the second phase, right? So it's a phase by phase process. It's a linear approach, right? Is it linear or sequential now? Linear, sequential. I can't remember textbook knowledge. So you have to follow one before the other. So you can't say, okay, at least while we are getting approval and everything, can we start building? No, you can't start building. It has to be approved, right? So by the time everything is approved, let's say Nigeria bureaucracy, they did not approve your building. Let's assume you go and buy a building in GRA, and then Sanwo-Olu also has interest in that building, and say, oh, you spend time in court and blah blah blah. You spend almost 2 years fighting that battle in court. Finally, you fight the battle, and after 2 years, that design is not invoked anymore, right? Now, usually, because you already spend money on design and everything to approve, to change that design, you have to go back again to the ministry for another approval, right? So usually, and by the time you got there, aside from the design, price of commodities are now very expensive, a lot of things. So by the time you start, you had budgeted that you spend 2 million on a project, but because of inflation, that project is already 4 million. And you would see the reason why a lot of projects were abandoned. All right. So Waterfall in itself was flawed in that way. And because of that flaw, people started thinking, how can we solve this problem? How can we make life better? Right? Then they came up with Agile. Agile means that Agile, Agile, somebody's Agile. That means they can just grab something at once. So Agile means that, we are basically in its core, it means that I am open to fail. I am open to fail. Like we think of failure by default, so that when we fail, we can fail fast. It's just fail fast, right? So this is what Agile is. The mindset has 5 major components or 4 major components. Of course, it has 12. The manifesto has 12 items on it, but those 12 items are summarized into 4 major processes. The first one is we have individuals over interactions. Can you guys hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly, everybody?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So we have individuals and interaction over processes and tools. Like I said, if based on what I explained about Waterfall now, you will know that processes is like, if those processes are not followed, you have failed, right? But Agile is saying, see, processes and tools, they are there to help individuals. So focus on the individual. Whatever will make, that's when all this work-life balance started coming in. Before, there's only like work-life balance. So you will sleep. Project manager, you will sleep do you understand? So now they are saying the individual and the interactions with them should be more prioritized over the processes that you have in place and tools. You stop hearing me, or you want to ask a question? If it's a question, can we do it later? Innocent.
No, I just said when you said no work-life balance, I wanted to say even in Access Bank before we have war room. where there's an issue, it's called a war room. All of us on court till 12, 1 o'clock, and so for now.
Yeah, I think I'll still explain that, because we still do have war rooms in Agile. I'll explain the difference between the two when we get there, because we have a day dedicated to talking about incidents, how we manage it as product managers and all of that, especially in the AI space. All right. So again, individual and interactions over every other thing, right? Then another one is working software over comprehensive documentation. Like I said, you could spend a whole year documenting what you want to build, but Agile is saying, see, the litmus paper that you guys are working is that we see results. So outcome over, remember what I said yesterday or the day before yesterday, outcome over output, right? See, make sure that you have something, we call it iterations, right? Make sure that you have an iteration after every time that you work. Make sure you have I'm trying to remember the word we use in computer science, but yeah, make sure you have at least a working software, right? That's when all these MVP and all of those wanting things were released. In fact, that's when features became a thing. There was only like feature before. You have a app, right? Those features had to be thought about before you even start. You can't just say, oh, we want to add a feature to it. No, systems were not built that way at that time, right? And that's why now most of our banking app, if you had something to it, the other thing will not work again, because they were not built to accommodate change earlier on, right? So again, working software over comprehensive documentation. So We learn on the job, right? We understand that. Then customers collaboration over contract negotiation. Now, this is a tricky and dicey part. I've seen some of my students come to me and say, no, this part of Agile is a very, very stressful part. And I would be sincere with you, right? That term of customers always right? And the fact that customer does not want to pay, right? Customer does not want to pay, and customer is always right. No, you have to pay. So understand that initially there's always contract negotiation. That means at every phase in time, somebody has to do an handover, and then after the handover, this process, blah 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 blah. Pay the architect, and after the architect, you deliver, blah 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 blah. But he's saying no. Instead of doing that, build on collaboration. Now, all of us understand that this is our project. We are family, right? This is where the we are family conversation comes from. That all of us will work together to bring result out of this, and then when the result is out, we enjoy the benefit of it, right? So that's the idea. They're responding to change over following plan. I've told you, because of the way the world is working very fast, we actually respond to change more than we follow plan. There might be a whole long plan, and then that plan will be say, yeah, delete it. We have something new coming on based on the things that are coming up. I'm sure companies before AI became the world best, right? Because AI is the world best now, right? And AI has been since so like AI is not now. It has been around for more than 10 years, but it just suddenly became world best for some weird reason, right? Before AI became world best for some weird reason, like I said, companies had plans, they had ideas, they had. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Lovely. My team is acting up. All right, so they had plans, right? But now that AI is there, every CEO wants to have AI because without AI, investors will not bring money, right? Especially in tech. We live on investors' funds in tech. God have mercy on all of us, right? So this is an idea. So that's what Agile is basically is. But one thing to remember is that Agile is not an excuse not to document. I've seen product managers tell me that we're in an agile space now. Why should I be writing PRD that is very long? The difference between the documentation that we used to write before as product managers in the waterfall era and the documentation we write now is that now the documentation is a living document. I'll often say it's a living document. So which means that this documentation ideally get updated over time. So you would often find PRDs now having versions. You have version 1, version 2, version 3, and then you have a section of the PRD that contains, I'll be teaching you guys PRDs tomorrow, a section of the PRD that contains the change log. That when you update something, you summarize what you updated, who approved it, and all of that. I mean, it doesn't even have to be approved, why you changed it, or what date it was changed, and what version is this. And then you append the previous version that was unchanged to the document, right? So PRDs, unlike before, are now a living document. It doesn't mean that we don't have them. And this is very important. So what are PRD? PRDs is product requirement document. Aside from PRD, we have a lot of other documents that we write as product managers. So because we now say, oh, we prioritize working software over comprehensive documentation, you now say, no, me, I'm not doing comprehensive documentation. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say to you. No, there's a balance in it. The only difference is that we don't follow documents as though we're a dog following its owner. No, documents that we write are they listen to us. Those documents listen to us because we wrote them. So and then we can change them. That's what's the difference between Agile and Waterfall. I've explained a lot about both of them, so I'll just move out of this. Now, as popular as Agile is, not every company also uses Agile, right? Agile has different variation as well. It has different version. Let's call it version. It has different version. We call it framework in textbook knowledge. But if I say framework, it might not make sense to you. But it's a version, right? So we understand Agile now, but Agile is practiced in different ways by different companies, right? That's what I mean by versions. Scrum is one of the most popular way that people actually practice Agile. right? I'll teach you a bit about Scrum. Some people also combine both together. They combine Scrum and Kanban together, or Safe and Scrum. With bigger organizations, Safe is the best approach because then you have multiple teams, multiple agile teams practicing Scrum, and then you now have them come together. We call that Scrum of Scrums. We do that in my company, right there. So you as a product manager, you're handling your own team. Another product manager is handling their own team. You now have a group product manager who is using Safe. That means he's now calling a Scrum of Scrum, where he's managing everything that everybody's doing. Again, we'll still talk a bit about Scrum today as well, but I try to spend time so that these terms will not be a term in your mind. It will be something that you really understand, right? And then you can explain it in your own words to other people, right? Also, so I said here that Google, according to my research, they don't actually do Scrum, right? Uses some form of Kanban, but they don't use Scrum. So they are also a very agile team. Meta on their own side, they also very agile, but they have their own version of agile. So again, why did I do this? I do this to let you understand that the fact that you're agile does not mean that you get the job. That's not how it works, right? The fact that the company is saying that they are agile. Oh, I've worked in agile company before. Have you worked in the version of agile that we work in? No. But if you understand the entire context, the mind that agile itself is a mindset, you understand that okay, whatever framework or whatever version of it that you apply, they are just tools that we can learn to use together. Remember what I said, that in agile we prioritize individual and interactions over processes and tools. So all these our own version of agile, your own version of agile, they are just processes and tools, right? What matters if you understand how agile prioritizes human interactions and individual, then it becomes easy for you to use any of the agile frameworks, right? I've worked in at least two different settings. I've worked in settings where they use Scrum. I've worked in settings where they use Safe, which is Scrum of Scrum, and I've worked in settings where they use Kanban. So I will tell you and I've even worked in settings where they use Circle. There's something called Circle. I will explain it a bit to you guys. I'll go to very soon to explain to you. All right, so let's go on. The most popular framework that I said is Scrum, and this is the most popular. When I of us have been following product management. In Scrum, there are three major roles. Scrum believes that in an agile team, there are three major set of people. Number one, we have the product owner, which in most cases is you, right? Number two, we have the Scrum Master, which is like a project manager in the team that handles everybody's tasks to ensure that everybody is doing their tasks at the right time. But in most cases, right, this product owner and Scrum Master, now collabo. You are the one that will do both. in most cases, I don't want to use in the company I've worked on, right? I've worked with before. They only have one. They only have one Scrum Master in the entire company, right? So that Scrum Master oftentimes will just speak with the product manager and say, do you need help? Do you understand? He doesn't care about what you are doing. You will be the one to handle the role of a product owner and the role of a Scrum Master. Especially if you are working in a small team where the company is not willing to employ, like they don't see the reason why they should employ two people, right? So again, the product owner in its own self, he owns the whole vision of the product. The backlog, we have two types of backlog, by the way. I'll still talk about it in details. We have the product backlog and the sprint backlog. Now, the product owner is in charge of backlogs generally. So the product like backlog is where all your ideas sit. Sorry. And then the sprint backlog is where your prioritized idea sits. So you have decided that, okay, this idea, we are going to make it work. You have written the documentation. You've done all the necessary things that is ready to go. So you put it in a sprint. You say, okay, we'll do this next sprint or the next two sprints. I'll explain what sprint is as well very soon. So I can just explain it now. Sprint is basically, so how Agile works. Remember that we said earlier that in Agile, we prioritize the working software over comprehensive documentation. So what this means is that Agile expects you to have increments at every period of time. Increment is basically an evidence of work. Think of it as your software, right? in any agile company, we expect you to have something to show after you've worked for a period of time. So, for example, assume that you've worked in a company for two weeks. The Scrum Master will ask you that after these 2 weeks, what have you been able to deliver? And that's what we call it working software. So at least we should have something that we can say you can give to the customer, right? So that duration in which you are working on that increment is called a sprint. Now, this sprint could be 2 weeks. I've seen companies that have 3 weeks and 4 weeks. I know one of my students that said, oh, there's a company she works for that used to have 1 week sprint. I don't know how that worked because it practically does not make sense. But now with the AI space, 1 week sprint is very possible because developers are now writing with AI. Even us, right, that are product managers, we prototype faster with AI. I'll show you. I'll do a bit with you as well to let you see how, in fact, this entire page that we're using right now was built with AI. So things are moving very fast, right? So maybe you can have 1 week sprint, right? But before it used to be minimum of 2 and then maximum of 4 week sprint. So after every month, at least, an agile team will have something they say they release to the user to use. And that's the idea. So again, the product owner handles two things, like I said, the product backlog and the sprint backlog. So beyond the work of him managing the backlog is the voice of the customer in the company. The customer does not live with you in the company. He doesn't stay with you in the company. So he's the voice of the customer. He does customer interviews, visit the customers, and things like that, if need be. Right. And then the Scrum Master does not visit anything. He doesn't look at the customer. He doesn't look at the data. The work of the Scrum Master does not concern nothing. The only thing the Scrum Master manages is the agile ceremony. We call it other agile ritual, and I will explain a bit. Or let me not say ritual self. What he concerns the Scrum Master, his deliverable is to ensure that if I have a team that involves Innocent, Messi, Adiola, Jogo, and Peace, all of you has to deliver your work on time. That's the work of a Scrum Master. So all the ceremonies and rituals, I will explain some of those rituals now. All those ceremonies and rituals that we do are guided towards you doing your work on time. That's the summary. That's all the summary of that ceremony and agile. All right. So, and then we now have the dev team. We call them development team. The development team can involve your designer, your product architect, your IO team, basically all the people that are involved in developing your application. They are called the development team. And yeah, ideally, these are all the people that are involved in an agile Scrum team, right? And what are the artifacts? I've told you increment. Increment is basically the feature or whatever you are delivering after the 2 week sprint, right? After 2 weeks of work or 3 weeks of work, what can you show up for it? It's called an increment, right? I've told you what product backlog is the full dream or vision. Anytime you have an idea, you throw it inside. It's like your basket of ideas. And then your sprint backlog is when you have refined an idea, you've cleaned it up a bit, right? You can now put it into multiple sprints, right? I wish I can show you my current sprints now so that you can see how I layered all my sprints. And sometimes I just chuck in things inside it. All right, so what are the ceremonies that are, of course, Agile has multiple ceremonies, but some ceremonies are specific to Scrum. So what are those ceremonies? Sprint planning. Sprint planning is, I told you what sprint is, Abi. 2 to 4 weeks of work that is, you after it you now have an increment, like a software or a result that you can give to the user. Now, sprint planning is that call you have it with your team, development team, usually handled by the Scrum Master or the product owner. You have it with your team and then explain the vision to them, right? We have a feature. The feature is, let's assume this is your product, right? And this your product allows customer. Okay, so this particular product has just 3 buttons. It allows me, if I'm sharing screen, to like show you guys can see red, Abby. I hope you can see. Shall if I'm presenting screen, it allows me to point where I'm presenting. Like, oh, this is red. Look at this Scrum. These are then it allows me to go up and down in a presentation document. Let me go to this one. Let me do try show so that it's easier. Sorry. So I show you practical example. I don't know. I think they call it a dogu. Abi a dungu. Abi. Sorry. Where's this one now? Oh, who send you work? So if you see now, this allows me to basically control the screen, right? And then allows me to show you that, okay, I'm talking about this build. I hope you guys are seeing the red. I hope you are seeing the red. If you're not seeing it, say yes. Are you seeing red? Do you see red? Everybody? Please tell me you are seeing red. Why is everybody quiet now? Anyway, it allows...
Well, we can see it, sir.
You can see red, thank you. Some people cannot see red. I don't know how they cannot see red. Anyway, it allows you to do those three things. So while I'm presenting, I can actually point to what I'm talking about, or I can move the presentation slide, right? Now, those are three things that I can do with this particular product. So if I'm planning a sprint and I want to add another thing that allows me to maybe switch from that particular presentation to another presentation. Let's assume I have two presentations that I'm presenting. I want to switch to the second one with the same toggle. So I'm telling my team that in the next 2 weeks, we'll have a new feature that allows us to switch presentation. Now, what I do in the sprint planning is I come to the sprint planning, show them vision, and then we discuss how do we get there. And then, for example, the front end person says, "Oh, we need this particular feature." The back end person says, "No, it won't work. I think we should do this, blah blah blah." And then when they agree together, then they commit to it. They tell you that yes, it is possible to do in the next 2 weeks. Oh no, it is not possible to do in the next 2 weeks. And then whatever it is possible, and that's what you put in. Sometimes during sprint planning, even though we already have things we want to put in the sprint, we sometimes deprioritize those things for other things, because those things we want to do in the sprint, we are not able to do it because we don't have enough context. Maybe the team says, "Oh, I need to research about it." Then maybe you can add a ticket for them. We call it spike. You can add a ticket for them to actually go and research how to actually implement it before the coming sprints, so that you can actually finish your sprint. One of the biggest problem in a sprint, in most product management team, is that developers and designers just rush into work without research. And at the end of the day, they don't finish their tasks within the sprint. And the goal of a sprint is that we finish our tasks and then we have an increment. Remember, about? So to ensure that they finish it, that's why we do planning. You define in that call, you have, as you can see, 2 to 4 hours max. Me, I don't like meetings. So in my sprint planning, highest 1 hour, we are done. All of us are gone, right? And how do I do that? I'm giving you guys trade secrets now. How do I do that? Before the sprint planning, when I see that one of my developer is free, I usually have like a call with them, right? I have a call with them. I don't think Mr. Dogo knows that his video is on. Your video is on in case you didn't intentionally do that. All right. So what I do is before that particular, before the general sprint planning, what I do is when they are free within the sprint, I just call them. Alpha Baba, I want to achieve this particular thing. Do you think it makes sense? Say, let me check. They check and then get back to me. So that way we don't spend a long time actually in sprint planning. Some of them will say, "Oh, I checked what you said over the weekend and I think it makes sense. This is what we'll do." And even though it's a casual conversation, me, I'm writing notes. I'm putting it. So when I go to my sprint planning, it's always very smooth. We don't do plenty talks, right? Because I already have the talks with them during the previous sprint, right? So it's something that you can also do. There's something we call daily stand-ups as well. This is probably very popular. This stand-up is where you call everybody, and they do it even in places that is not agile team. Everybody come together and everybody tells you, "Oh, again, one mistake people do," because this is a practice that already exists before agile. people are now merging it with Agile. So the idea of daily stand-up is for developers to come and say, hey, Egbamio, something is blocking me. I will not be able to finish my work. This particular guy is not finishing his work, right? Come and tell me what will not allow us to increase that, to release that increment that we have plans to do, so that you can find the issue and tackle it on time, so that it is not after that 2 weeks that you're supposed to release that you now come and say, no, we did not know about it, or we can't release, or something like that. So that's why we do daily stand-up. However, most companies do it wrongly. They come there and give update of what they do. So they come to daily sprint and say, hey, yesterday I worked on this and this and this, and then today I'll be working on this and this and this. No, that's not the goal of a daily stand-up. The goal of a daily stand-up is tell them, I have a blocker. How do you unblock me? Yes, I'm confident that I will be able to finish it before the end of the sprint. So that's why it will not be long, right? Not to come and give updates about when I wrote here, I said, what did I do? What will I do? And what's blocking me? So ideally, reverse is the case. What exactly is blocking me? If there's nothing blocking you, I don't want to hear anything from you. If somebody says you are blocking them, you have to explain, right? So that way, it gives us a chance to be sure that what we want to release will be released eventually, right? So we don't expect you to come to daily stand-up and come and tell us, so yesterday I wrote a code that would help us. No, I don't want to know what you wrote. Are we happy? Are we looking good to actually release this when we want to release it? Oh yes, we are looking good. In the next 2 weeks, I will be done. Or in the next 1 week, I'll remind them again, guys, we have just 3 days to the end of the sprint. And based on what I'm looking at the board, right, you guys are not moving your task. What's going on, right? That's the work of the Scrum Master. Now, there's something we call sprint review as well. After the end of a sprint, we used to do a little demo of what we have done, what we've been able to achieve in the sprint. We demo it and everybody will see it. And then we'll say, oh, this is good. And then we'll give feedback, blah, 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 before the QA actually start working on it. Usually, if once we do that internal demo, if we have any issues, we also try to resolve it that same day before we start another sprint, right? And then in the sprint review as well, we'll collect feedback. Some people will not finish their tasks and say, oh, I didn't finish my task because Michael was asking me too much questions. Or no, I had an issue. My internet, the IT did not allow internet to work fine, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, sorry, we'll work on that, right? That's the idea behind the sprint review. And then there's retro. Now, retro is done at the end of every sprint as well. Or you can choose, again, to do it at the end of 2 sprints. Again, this is my plan. I do it at the end of every 2 sprints. And why? Because it was sounding like we're doing the same thing over and over again. So idea of retro is to allow everybody to tell us in the last 2 sprints that we've done, what have we done well, right? As a product manager, am I helping you guys to succeed? Is there something that the company is doing that you feel like is not helping you succeed as a team? Or, for example, in this particular sprint, right, do you think that it is hard for you to move your ticket from one place to the other? Is there a blocker for you? For example, you can say, oh, the team is taking time to review my code. And because they're taking time to review my code, I cannot merge it and test, right? And so sometimes I'm waiting for them 2 days, 3 days, and before you know, time has gone, and it's okay. We now talk as a team, guys. Can we put processes in place to ensure that we actually review on time, right? Some of those processes would be that, okay, let's do an alert system. If a PR is raised or an MR is raised for, again, what's PR? PR is peer review. MR is merge review. So when you merge, I'll explain a lot. We have not gotten into technical spots. But when you're a developers have a place where they put their code. When they move their code to that place, oftentimes they are not allowed to move it to the place where they put it for customers that uses it. So they move it to a place where we call it staging environment. However, even with that staging environment, it has to be approved by other member of the team, reviewed. If your company is not doing that, you should ensure to do it. It has to be reviewed by other developers. It will take maybe a few minutes. They just have to look at the code, what is changing. And then those other developers will come and say, hey, guy, I think you should change this part. It will break a code that I worked on last 3 days. Change it to this, right? Something like that's the idea. so that a new change does not break something that has happened before, right? So usually, developers don't review other people's code on time. So how do we ensure we can set up an alert system in our Teams channel so that once a peer review is taking longer than 2 hours or 3 hours, it sends notification and tag people that have not reviewed. Right, that way they know that fire on the mountain. Let me quickly go and review and all that. That can be something we decide in the retro as a team. So the retro is a safe space where everybody can talk without judging one another. And these ceremonies are oftentimes handled by who? The Scrum Master. But in a place where you don't have the Scrum Master, usually you are the product manager. We undo the role of the product owner and the role of the product or the Scrum Master. But in a normal, good environment, your role is only limited to product owner in a Scrum environment. All right. There's another way to actually practice Agile, which is called Kanban. Usually, companies merge the two together. Now, Kanban in itself is okay. So let me show you an example of Kanban. Where's my Jira? Jira. I hope it's not service management. Is this my work email? Okay, no, that's not my work email. Why is it not showing? I have Jira account now. Why am I signing up? I have Jira account. Don't tell me to sign up. Okay, I don't want to use my work account. That's why I'm showing you this. Now we close this. Cancel, please. All right, so let me go to. No, not Jira Service Management. Not Jira Service Management, please. I need Jira itself. Okay, let me just go Trello. So I want to show you what Kanban looks like. So Kanban looks like this. This is what they call the Kanban board, right? So usually in a Kanban board, you assign a task to somebody in the team. Let me look for one board that I had people on. Sorry, I've had a lot of. So you see this board now. I have a lot of people on it. So usually I just keep putting things on the backlog. And when the team is ready, they move. For example, this person knows this is assigned to them. I've discussed it with them. Once they are ready to work on it, they move it to work in progress and then start working on it. When I'm done prioritizing it, I move it from my backlog, move it to. Somebody said my screen is too small. I move it to work in progress, right? Which is to do. And then once I put it to do, developers can come here and move their item to work in progress, which is in progress, and say, okay, now I'm working on it. I'm working on it now. So when I see it here, I already know what everybody's working on. No need for sprint review, no need for daily stand-up, no need for everybody is taking ownership of work. As a product manager, I come here, put information about the ticket I want you to work on. When I'm done and I know that that ticket is ready to go, I move it to work in progress, already assigned to you. So all you have to do is, if you feel like you're ready with it, you chat me up. Do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? If I want you to do that or do this, and I say, okay, no problem, it's good to go. Then when you are free, when you are done with, for example, this person is done with this particular part, waiting for review. So instead of them to just be waiting and not doing anything, they will come here and move this particular ticket because you already highlighted what they need to do. So there's no need for meetings and all those things. So again, that's the idea behind Kanban in real life, right? Yeah, okay, so there's book knowledge. However, in real life, company merges this, right? They merge this with this, especially, I'll talk about it very soon as well, especially because people work online and offline. Usually, the Kanban style, I know well, some of us are seeing it. Usually, there's a big board in the company where they put tasks and tickets and everything to remind you what to do. So you just go and pick anyone that you're already working on and move it. So everybody looks at the board and know what is going on, right? That's the traditional way of doing it. But since we have board now, it's easier. However, people lose track of time. People lose track of things. So because of that, companies combine Kanban and Scrum together and then practice it together as Agile. Now, I already explained what your role in Scrum is. You own the backlog. Of course, you write the documentation, you define the sprint goal, and then you accept or reject the sprint work. At the end of the sprint review, you're the one that will say, okay, this is what I told you guys to do. This is not what I accepted. That's why you're reviewing it. So this is the ideal role. But like I said, if you are not the if you are the only product manager in the company, you don't have the Scrum Master in the company, then you would have to take the responsibility of a Scrum Master as well. So how do we groom backlog? Usually, again, this can work with you. What is backlog grooming? Remember I said there are two types of backlog, the sprint backlog and the product backlog. So how do I ensure that I don't lose things in traffic, right? So what I do, you put items, for me, I put items first in the, actually, I have another board, which I call idea board, right? This idea board is just raw ideas that are there. Sometimes discussion I have with customers and all that. And then when those ideas are becoming to form, when I realize that I've validated that we have more people looking for it, I now move it to product backlog, right? When I have all the answers, that means I've made the requirement, I've seen that this is possible, then I move it to my sprint backlog. Usually I do this, I have a calendar, I have a meeting on my calendar twice a week, on Monday and on Friday. So I block 2 hours on Monday and 4 hours on Friday to just clean up everything on my backlog. So I don't forget an idea there and say, okay, this idea will just be living here, right? And again, some companies have structure to ensure that you actually manage your backlog effectively as well. So you can just follow your company's own. I think I will stop here because I feel like I've given you guys a lot of things to think about. However, tomorrow I'll round up this and then we'll just do PRD. PRD is it's not a very big series. So I'll do velocity, capacity planning and all that. Then we'll finalize this tomorrow, then move to PRDs. Do we have any questions so far?